Candidates Forum. Welcome. We're glad to see you out there in the audience here and in the audience at home. The moderator for the forum is Don Richards, who is behind me. The forum is being sponsored by AAUW. It is an organization. It's the American Association of University Women. It's an organization that advocates equity for women through education, advocacy, and research. How can I forget that? And research. And that's very important to us to be involved in a program like this, which focuses upon education. Tonight we have the candidates behind me, and there are 4 candidates running for 3 positions. We have Bo Herstein, Monica Laval, and Alan Tuftenhagen. Crystal Du Bois has been asked, but has chosen not to participate. Questions for this evening have been solicited through a prior email, and they've been collected and given to our moderator. However, audience members may make additional questions if they have them, and they will be addressed as well. So thank you very much for coming this evening. If you have any questions, let me remind you to turn off your cell phones so that won't be a distraction for our guests, and they enjoy our evening.
Good evening. I'm Don Richards, and I will be the moderator for this evening's forum. As mentioned earlier, I will be asking questions from community members that were submitted in advance by email or by our audience tonight. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. There will be a timekeeper for responses. That will be Elaine, and she will post a yellow card at the 1 minute 30-second mark, and then a red card at the 2-minute mark, ending the allotted response time. At the end of the question period, each candidate will have 1 minute to summarize their reasons for wanting to serve as a school board member. First, let's begin with the candidates introducing themselves to our forum viewers. We'll do it in alphabetical order, so it'll be David, Monica, and Alan.
All right. Well, first off, I want to thank the AAUW for hosting this forum tonight. It's great to be here. Hopefully there's a lot of people online, not as many people here as I thought there would be, but I'm hoping there'll be a lot of people online watching. So I'm excited to share things that I feel about the school board and some of the questions that have been asked. My name is David Bo Herstein, and I have lived in River Falls for over 50 years of my life. 2 years, I'm 52 years old, and for about 2 years, moved out of River Falls and came to my senses and said, I gotta come back to this place. I kind of stuck with both my given name, David, and my nickname, Bo, because a lot of people know me that way, and I want to make sure that they know who it is. I've got friends of mine that don't even know my name is David. So I wanted to make sure that if they went out and voted and they wanted to vote for me, that they would have that opportunity to know who I am. My wife, Allie, and I have 5 kids between us. We have 3 of them that are already through high school and are in college. We've got 2 in the high school. We've got a senior and a freshman. So definitely have had kids that have gone all through the school district. As I said, born and raised in River Falls, so I'm a 1990 graduate of River Falls High School. So certainly a passion of mine is this school district and this community, obviously, by living here all my life. I have served on numerous youth boards. I've served on the River Falls Youth Boys Basketball Board. I was on the board for 13 years, and 5 of those years I was president of the association. I also served on the River Falls Youth Softball Board, and I was treasurer for 3 years of that. So I've done some of the community stuff. I'm on the Lions Club in River Falls. I'm actually on the board on that as well. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background of who I am, where I've been.
Are you an incumbent?
No.
None of you are incumbent.
Alan is. Yep, we're new. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Monica Lavold, and
Many people probably know me from the library, so if I look familiar to you, that is why. My family and I moved to River Falls in 2012, and at the time that we moved here, it was because I had accepted the position of the Youth Services Librarian at the River Falls Public Library, which is great. So I served as the Youth Services Librarian for 9 years. And then I actually left River Falls to be the director of the New Richmond Public Library. So I'm currently a library director. Still live in River Falls. Still love River Falls. I am the mom of 2 kids. Both of my children did graduate from River Falls High School in 2018 and 2020. So that was the whole COVID thing. That was fun. They went in wildly diverse paths. And what I really love is that this school district allowed them to be able to do that. So one of my sons is graduating with a degree in accounting, and one of my sons never went to college and currently works as a special ed para at Meyer Middle School, and is loving it. My husband is a teacher at the high school, and he is also, I'm going to get this right, the JV hockey coach and the head boys and girls golf coach. So he's a 3-season sports coach. We as a family are very involved in athletics and extracurricular activities in the community. And so I'm here because I want to serve this community. I love the kids and youth. Love River Falls.
Hi, I'm Alan Tuchtenhagen. I've been on the school board since 2008. I was appointed to the school board in 2008 and have served since continuously. So I think this is my 6th election. I think the 6th time I've done this forum of some type. So as Bo said, I really appreciate the fact that AAUW is willing to do this and put it together and provide the community with one more opportunity to hear from us. Several things about me. One is I currently serve as clerk of the board. I also chair the Ed Programs Committee and have for quite a few years. In addition to my involvement in the River Falls School Board, I'm also on the board of directors for the State School Board Association, Wisconsin Association of School Boards, or WASB. And I represent West Central Wisconsin, basically all the school districts from Eau Claire to the Minnesota border, and do the orientation for new board members and those kinds of things in this region. So I'm connected more broadly and be able to represent issues from districts like River Falls more statewide and let our voice be heard in Madison, voice of school districts like River Falls, and in particularly some of the things that affect school districts like River Falls. Just as an aside, there are 421 school districts in this state. The average school district size is 1,000 students. That makes River Falls a big district. And most of the WASB board and those kinds of things are much smaller districts. So it's nice having representation from a district this size so that our voices are heard, because we have some very unique needs in Madison. Anyway, I love this kind of work, and I keep doing it. I'm retired currently. Worked for 5 decades in higher education and retired a couple years ago. But I keep doing this because this is a calling. I get a lot out of this service, and I enjoy working with the staff here and especially the other board members.
Well, David, to address your concern about not many people being here and hoping that they would be watching online, I want to repeat the words of my friend Dave Linehan, who told me today that he would probably watch it online, but he didn't know whether he would actually want to straighten out his sock drawer instead. Well, but I'm pretty sure I got him convinced. Let's start into the questions. Question 1, school board members are responsible for making decisions in the best interest of the River Falls School District. If elected, what will you do if you don't personally agree with a decision that is in the best interest of the district?
Who do you want to start?
Why don't you start, David?
Sounds good. A good question. And I feel like this is something that we go through all the time in our lives. whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's in a social setting. You're not always going to agree with everybody all the time. But I think the important thing is to listen and respect the other board members and their perspectives. They may bring a perspective that I didn't think of, or an idea that I didn't think of, and that may help with decision making. I think if you don't agree, you want to make sure that you voice your opinion, back it with my thoughts, my feelings, some facts if I have some facts on it, and make it be known that that's my opinion and this is how that goes. Again, we're not always going to agree on everything, but when you're working together with other people, you want to come up with a decision that makes the most sense for the majority of the people. And I think that's super important. And like I said, I think we do that every day in our lives. I know I do, whether it's at home or whether it's at work. And I think that's just an easy way to go through it.
Monica?
Thank you. What he said? No. No, I agree. I don't actually believe that it is my job to push my own agenda or get my own way. I think that when we choose to serve and come and be a part of something like a board, we are representing other people. And so it is part of our job not only to have our own opinions and voices, and I agree, make them heard, but to recognize that we are representing other people and we want to reach out and make sure that all voices are coming to the table and everyone has an opportunity to be represented. And in that sense, I think that the disagreement is actually important. I think that civil discourse is really what makes a lot of a board like this work and move forward. Willingness to respectfully disagree, to listen to each other's sides, to have respect for who we are as people, but to understand that we represent, as Alan said earlier, a pretty large, unique, and diverse community with a lot of different opinions. And we certainly don't want to have a board where we all think alike. We want to have a board where we work respectfully together, but have ability to voice those opinions and represent the diversity in this community.
Well said with both of you. I think one of the things that I enjoy most about being on the school board, and sometimes we have to search for things, reasons as to why we enjoy being on the school board, okay? But we really have a nice group of people to work with, and we don't all agree. The challenge, I think, for some people is that they don't see our disagreements. In fact, we've been actually chastised during open comments for, why don't you guys disagree more and all that. One of the, I think, key things to the success of the current board is, because we have very different opinions, those kinds of things, is when issues come before us, our agenda comes before us, our opinions come second. All right, so the first thing we do is we want to listen. What's the issue? We want to listen to each other, okay? We want to talk about it and decide, based on that, do we have differing ideas or not? So we talk through it before we begin to disagree. And I'm one of those people who just firmly believes that 60 to 70% of us can come to some accommodation on 60 to 70% of the issues in this world if we'll just talk to each other, right? I think we can come to reasonable solutions. We can't always get there, but you're only one vote as a board member, and unless you can find 3 other people to agree with you, your one vote and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, I mean, it literally, you can be out there. So you've got to work together so we can get solutions. And often, I think if we talk long enough, we'll come together, which is why we often end up voting in unison and vote 7-0, is because we've talked long enough and we've come to some agreement as to where we can go and why we should do it. So I appreciate the other members of the board and look for that in future board members. It's a sign of what the voters expect of us, is to get along and talk and come to resolution, not to sit and fight and bicker.
Moving on to question 2. The members of the River Falls School Board have a history of working together in a respectful, collaborative, effective manner. If elected, how will you contribute to this culture? And why don't you start it out, Monica?
I would be delighted. feel like this is a little similar to the last question. But I think this is really a strength of the current board. And I think that the idea of this collaborative culture, the working together, it really goes to show that there is a lot of respect for board members as people, as humans, but also a recognition that we are representing a larger demographic of people and that we are here to really do what is the best for the students and the teachers in this district, regardless of personal opinions. And I think that keeping in mind our ultimate goals and really thinking about school priorities and values and what we've outlined as where we want to go will help contribute to this culture of collaboration, respectful civil discourse, and an understanding of our priorities and our values. Contributing to that, I think also listening. Thank you.
What would you add, if anything? David?
You know, I think Monica's right. I think we've kind of heard this question before. Just the last one was kind of similar. So I think there's definitely some similarities you're going to hear here. You know, like I've got some notes written down, and this was something that I've done kind of all my life. It's something that we deal with all the time. I think the current board, from what I've seen, I've gone to meetings and I've watched them online, and I've been at meetings. They seem to get along pretty well, and that's great. I think they have potentially some. I don't necessarily feel this way. I necessarily feel this way, but I think that's a good thing. And how will I contribute to that? Well, I did it in school when I was a kid. You know, you worked in groups in school, and you had to assign tasks, and people were assigned tasks, and you worked together, and you did stuff together to get a project done, and you wanted to get a good grade on it. So I think we've done it there. I've done it in my employment. Been employed for 30 plus years, and you know, it's not all me just doing my own thing. We work together on things. I'm a local banker here in town, and I work with a lot of other people in the bank, and we work together real well. And you just help out whenever you need to, and that's something that's just kind of instilled in me. I'll go back to my sports organizations. You know, 13 years on the youth basketball board. There's some disagreements, but you work out what's best for the kids and for the organization. So I think it's something that I feel like I've done all my life. I think we probably have all done this all our lives, and it's just something you can easily bring to the board.
Alan?
I think sort of continuing that discussion, as I read this question, I was reminded of a college president I worked with once. Really enjoyed working with him. And in his opening of school comments to all the new freshmen each year, he'd have this talk. And he would say, "What's expected of you?" And he was kind of a theologian as well as a educator. But anyway, "What's expected of you" is the way he put it. He said, "If you want to succeed in college, you show up, you pay attention, you do the work." It's not easy being on the school board. I'm not complaining about it. It's just that this isn't a committee meeting that you show up and kind of listen and half-heartedly can participate in. You've really got it. We get a big packet every week, because we have the committee meetings as well as the regular meetings. You need to go through it. It's not arduous by any means, but we need to know what we're talking about when we're into it. And if we don't know what we're talking about, we need to ask. And we've got really good staff. And I think it's one of the things that keeps us on track together and talking is because we have such competent staff in this district. They're a great resource for us. So we can bring our opinions if we want, but hopefully our opinions are informed by all the information that we've got. And in the end, sometimes we disagree, sometimes we don't, but in the great American spirit here of compromise, we typically can come to some kind of resolution to most issues and move forward. And even when we disagree, and even when we have a divided vote, we typically come together and support the board's decision. That's the common thing, and it's one of the things we teach them from WASB, the new board members, is come together and support your board's decision once it's been made. Your community will appreciate that, and you'll be more effective as a board.
Question 3. Please outline steps that you have taken to learn about the responsibilities of school board service. Please tell us if you have attended school board meetings, to become familiar with the board's work and how, if elected, you will prepare for future school board meetings. Alan, why don't you answer first?
Okay, well, one of the things I learned was that if you want to know what you're getting into, go to some board meetings before you actually get on the board, because it may or may not be what you're thinking it's going to be. It might be more interesting for you. It might be less interesting. So I was appointed to the board, and when I put my name in to be appointed to the board, there were actually 7 of us, I think, that did it at the time. And I showed up at several board meetings beforehand, so I started the process then to know what I was into. What do I do now that I've been on the board for a number of years for my own board professional development? I'm still very involved with the WASB. They have a statewide education conference, which is fantastic. It's one of the best conferences I've ever been to, and they have it every year in Milwaukee in January. They have regional meetings, and they have webinars that help keep us informed. We also have committee meetings, 3 members on each committee, but we typically attend all of the committee meetings, which are different than the regular meetings, and that helps keep us informed. And we try and do regular or semi-regular meetings with our central office staff and sometimes our building leadership, and often meet directly with other groups, teachers and others, so that we can stay informed. One of the things that we do in our committees sometimes, Ed Programs has been doing this quite a bit, is we actually go out to a site. So we've had our committee meetings at the Renaissance Academy. We had a committee meeting at the Montessori recently, and we do this other. So this is how we sort of keep engaged and keep learning, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And if that's a lifelong thing, then as board members, as long as I've been here, there's still lots of things I don't know, and I'm still learning.
Monica.
Thank you. Since submitting my paperwork, I have attended a number of sessions, full board meetings, but also the committee meetings. I agree to get an idea of exactly what I'd be getting myself into. I also can speak to being on the other side of the table, so to speak. So in my professional life, I am a library director, which is an administrative position. And so I am the one preparing the board packets for my board. So I am governed by a board, and I'm the person who puts all the things together, writes the policies, and really prepares things. And so I know from my work as a library director what I hope for and want from my board. And what I hope for and want from my board of trustees in the library is that they will read all the packets, take the information seriously, ask lots of questions, but also give guidance. And I do think that's important. And the way you learn to do that, I think Alan's point is excellent, is to never stop learning, to keep experiencing everything we can to know more and more about this community, this district, the people in it, and what their needs and hopes are. So I do know those are things I hope for, and I hope that if elected, I would model my board service after kind of that hope.
Bo?
Kind of in the question, it talks about responsibilities of board service. So I kind of thought of a few things that I thought to me were responsibilities of the board, of a board member. I think that you need to listen and be a liaison between the community and the school district and the board. So you need to listen to what the community has to say and what their thoughts are. And certainly if there's a lot of those things, you need to bring those to the board. And so I think that's definitely a responsibility of a board member. Being fiscally responsible. I think working at a bank helps me a little bit with that, because the people I deal with have to be fiscally responsible for me to be able to work with them. So that's something that I do believe I have. I think you have to develop and implement the strategic plan. And I think that's definitely a responsibility of a board member, and also to advocate for the kids, the staff, and the community. So I think those are just kind of bullet points of things that I thought of responsibilities. What have I done to try to prepare for this? I watched the November and January meetings online, regular board meetings online. January was my youngest son's birthday, so apologize, but I was not going to miss that. I attended the December general meeting, and then I attended all 3 of the meetings, the committee meetings in February, and then attended the regular meeting as well. Plan to do that in March. I know we've got one coming up on Monday, a committee meeting on Monday, so I plan on attending to that. I also do read the agendas before I even go, and I've read a bunch of them even before I went to some of these to try to look over it. As a banker, I thought if I do get elected, and I'm lucky enough to be elected, probably the Finance and Facilities Committee might be something that's kind of up my alley. Not that I don't know if I get to pick that, but it's something that'd be up my alley. So I'm definitely looking at the finances to this point and seeing how things go, and I have lots of questions already. So I think that's important. Making sure I read the agenda, read the minutes, study up.
Next question. Academic achievement is measurable, but the cause and effect of social, emotional, and behavioral changes is more difficult to measure when determining whether continued financial investment is worthwhile. How should a school board evaluate the success or failure of popular social theories adopted in their schools? And I guess we'll start this one with Bo.
I gotta be honest with you, Don, I missed that question because I'm trying to find out where this is at.
All right.
2.2, okay, I got it. I'm good then, I'm sorry.
I didn't.
I missed one, so I apologize for that. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure what's being asked here, but I'm gonna do my best to kind of say what I think the answer is. I think it's important to know the social, emotional, and behavioral needs of the kids in the district, of the students. I do think there are some ways to I'm sorry, I didn't have that on. I do believe there are some ways to track some of this through some district goals and some actions to try to find out this behavior. I think we can probably track some of this data based on attendance, based on engagement, discipline, counseling and therapy needs of students. I think we need to ask the parents and the students, you know, how are you feeling emotionally, socially, behaviorally? How are things going in the district? Are you running into concerns? Are there things that we can do better? I do think there's a link between academic achievement and kids feeling safe in the district. Having someone that they can talk to, and I think they can do better in school when they feel safe at the schools.
Alan?
This the same preface comment as Bo. Not quite sure what this question is getting at, but I think that there's some there's always some buzz out there. Boy, in this world right now, politically, you can hardly say anything without finding somebody who will disagree with you at some point. So, when we talk about social and emotional learning as a district here, we're really talking about trying to reduce the roadblocks and stumbling blocks that students have toward academic learning. It's tough being a student these days. It's tough being an adult. This is a world that seems to thrive on conflict, and there's a lot of stress out there. So this question sort of gets at, I'll make some assumptions here what the question might be, but there are some measurable things that we can pull out of social and emotional learning. One of the things is we do the student risk survey every year as a district. And by the way, parents can opt out of that if they don't feel their student should be taking it. And some decide to do that, but it basically asks students about all kinds of things. And we can measure where they are with their stress level, where they are with potential issues around potential suicide, depression, all of those kinds of things. And we measure that. And we know that that's an issue in our school district. It's an issue in every school district in this state. It's an issue in every school district in this nation. It's one of the biggest challenges facing higher education right now is student mental health and social and emotional thing. And we've seen even some of that locally here in River Falls. And with the population as a whole. So what is it that we can do as a district that can help students through this? It's counselors, it's programs that help students through this, it's having an attitude in our school districts that help students in their social and emotional needs and getting along with each other so that they can learn.
The next question has quite a long preamble.
I think we need Monica to answer that one.
Oh, we have a question?
No, Monica hasn't answered.
Monica gets to answer.
I'm sorry. Monica.
Thank you. I will also say, when I saw this question, I did have some curiosity about maybe what it was getting at. I approached it similar to Alan's approach in that I was thinking about the school risk surveys, always giving parents that chance to opt out. And that survey, if you're not familiar with it, will ask questions about suicidal ideation, depression, drug use, I mean, all kinds of things that may be controversial, but certainly are impacting the social and emotional well-being of students. And I do think that it's important to note that stress and depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation are at an all-time high in our culture as a whole, not just in our school district. So it is something that, in my opinion, warrants the investment from the school district. I know that the school district has invested by increasing school counselors and adding social workers, which previously had never been in buildings before. And so I think when you think about ways to measure the success of these programs, to look at those surveys and how they may change over time after introducing social workers, extra counselors, additional programs, that there are ways we can get at that and sort of justify the investment that we're making in the emotional well-being of our students. But I would also really say, whatever the investment is completely worth it, because what is the cost? And the cost would be the well-being of our students and maybe even lives. And I think any investment that we can make to preserve that is absolutely worth it.
All right. The next question has been asked by Jeff J. Nielsen, Vice President of the River Falls FFA alumni, and he does some explanation of it before the question gets asked. And he says, "Thank you, school board candidates, for your willingness to serve as a member of the school board. I am proud to serve as an officer of the River Falls FFA alumni. I am also a River Falls graduate and live in River Falls Township. My question for the candidates centers around a very unique learning opportunity that our school system offers, but many, many residents may not be aware of. The River Falls School District has a very active tech ed, ag, and FFA program led by Mr. Ryan Pahachik. The FFA now has well over 100 students participating within the high school and middle school. By participating in these programs, students have an opportunity to learn and participate not only in a wide variety of classroom learning opportunities, but they get real-life, hands-on experience in not only production agriculture, such as corn, beans, and alfalfa, but everything from beekeeping to orchard crops and sustainable agricultural concepts. These unique opportunities exist because the River Falls School District has a real school farm located on the west side of the city that has proved to be a magnet for learning and has drawn many new students into learning new skills that will serve them well in the future. These efforts are also supported by a very active support group in the River Falls FFA alumni that provides funding and mentorships to assist these students on the farm. We see this as a huge advantage to give our students a real opportunity to learn and grow new skills that can serve them and our community well into the future. Now, here's the question. As a school board member, how do you feel about the value of this unique asset? And will you support the existence of this real-life classroom in the future? Okay, we'll start with Bo.
This is a great question, and there is no doubt that the tech ed department, the ag department, and Mr. Pachik do a wonderful job. My kids have had Mr. Pachik in class, had some of them have him as football coach. He does an excellent job with those kids, and they have learned a lot. I have a son in him right now, and he comes home and talks to me about stuff all the time, so it's a great program. I'm a huge believer in real life hands-on learning. I think that's a great way to learn for kids. Not everybody can read a book and learn. Not everybody can take a math quiz and learn. A lot of kids are hands-on. I'm kind of a hands-on person as well. If I was somebody wanted to show me how to change a tire, they can show me how to change a tire, but if I don't do it myself, I'm not going to know what I'm doing. My son's 15, and he could probably watch me drive and maybe pick up a few tips, but if he doesn't get behind the wheel, he's not really going to know how to drive. So I'm a huge proponent in that, hands-on experiences. I think they're great. This is something that I would support wholeheartedly.
We won't skip you this time, Monica.
Thank you. I also think this is a great question, and I came at it from a slightly different angle in that I thought this was a wonderful example of how this district is really thinking outside the box and collaborating with the organizations and community members around to sort of create innovative ways to extend learning. I absolutely love that students have this opportunity. And I know I mentioned earlier that I have two children who went to this district, and they are very, very different learners who have taken very, very different paths in life. And I think that it is programs like this that are unique and really get at different ways of learning that allow students to be successful in other areas, because not everyone is necessarily suited to the same classroom learning that other people might be. So I really do appreciate this, but I think that it is a really good example of this creative thinking and the way in which I know our school districts is thinking about the paths that are out there that students can take after high school, and how those paths are so different and vary from student to student, learner to learner, and that it's important to really understand who all of our students are and try to meet those needs. So I think this is a great example, and I absolutely support it.
Alan?
So since I'm the long-term board member here, I'll start with history. This is interesting because this land was originally purchased by the school district quite a while before I was on the board for a new school building. And part of it was sold off, but we kept that 30 or 40 acres, whatever it is out there. And for a while, when I first came on the board, we were renting it. And we're getting much off it, but it was renting it. The FFA alumni came forward and said, we would like to use that land and do it. And of course, Ryan is involved in all of this. Ryan Pahacek, he's just done, as these guys have said, done a wonderful job with this program. And so voila, a dozen years or more later, here we've got this great laboratory out there that we're using. And it's used for all kinds of things, and we couldn't do it without the FFA alumni. These are community members here who run the combines and help the students learn with it and all that sort of stuff. And these folks are passionate and very involved. So we couldn't have the program that we've got without them. It works very well. I think there's big and little things going on there. As you know, beehives, there's a small orchard out there. They do corn and soybean stuff. There's a whole variety of things. However, it is a district material asset. So I can't speak for future boards, but I think the current board is really committed to that. And I think ongoing, the board's got to be committed to having some land available for this kind of operation, because it's been really good. And whether it's that piece or we swap out that, because there's an industrial park that's growing right around it. And 20 years from now, we don't know. And as board members, we got to think about things like this. So do we commit to something that's going to have an industrial park around it, or do we just commit to the fact that we need land for these students to do it? And right now, that's a great place, and it's going to be another 10 or 20 years before that's not going to be, that may be affected that way. So I would say that this has been an excellent asset for us. I appreciate the FFA alumni. I definitely appreciate Ryan Pahacek's thing. And I would say there's been a renaissance in ag education in high schools in the last decade or 15 years or so. And I know I'm running just a little bit long, but River Falls has been at the forefront of that renaissance, because it really most high schools gave up agriculture in the 90s and early 2000s, and we've brought it back, and it's flourishing like it never really has before, and we're a model for the rest of the state in this region.
All right. Next question. Thousands of medical professionals, therapists, and young detransitioners worldwide believe that K through 12 schools should not support the gender fluidity social construct as scientifically sound, use gender-affirming behavior with minor children, or make efforts to deceive parents about their child's desire to deny his or her biological sex. Candidates, what positions do you take? Let's start with David.
I will be perfectly honest with you. This question baffled me coming in today, as far as because I don't have a huge history on knowing the subject very well. So if I really wanted to talk intelligently about this, there would have to be some research. I would have to do a lot more research on it. But I will kind of tell you what a very short answer to me is that you start talking, and it's mentioned in here about minor children. We start talking about minor children, parents have to be involved in this. If there's talk about transitioning or non-transitioning, detransitioners, parents have to be involved in that, because you're talking about minors. I don't believe minors should be making these kind of choices on their own, because as my wife tells me all the time with our kids, their frontal lobes just aren't developed yet. That's one of her big sayings, and that's one of the things we talk about a lot. But I think you got to get parents involved. And again, if I wanted to give more detail into this, I would have to just do more research on it. It's not in my field of expertise, so I can't speak super intelligently about it. But when you talk about minors, obviously we have to have the parents involved.
All right. Monica?
So my understanding is that the district did pass a policy in September of this past year on gender diverse students. And so I believe, as a potential board member, that my job is to fully support the policy. I don't believe that following that policy is deceitful, in terms of, it says deceiving parents. I believe that the board spent the time that needed to be spent to understand the sides, to respect the voices, and to really make the best decision that they could. And so I fully support the gender diverse student policy. I think the key part for me personally is that I believe strongly that schools are a safe place for children to learn and be themselves, and that they need to be a safe place for children to be able to be who they need to be. I don't at all intend to mean that is excluding parents, because of course parents have rights, and we want to include families in all of the decisions that we make. But I think that if we want learning to happen, if we want good learning to happen, if we want kids to be present and committed and in a headspace where they can really focus on what's happening, they need to be able to be who they are, regardless of what gender expression that may be.
Alan?
You know, as I read this question tonight, with just a couple word changes, the sentence could mean exactly the opposite, and I would say there would be as many, if not more, people in this community who would say that, who would ask that question. And I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong. I'm not going to wade in on that. I'm just saying that the question as asked is asked in an absolute sort of way. And if the September board meeting, where we had this room was full of people talking about it, is any indication, there are a ton of people in this district who would say the opposite to this. So from our standpoint, as Monica mentioned, we have a board policy on this. It's informed by legal counsel. This is evolving case law in the state and nationally. We're careful not to wade into this too deeply as it's working its way through the courts, decisions. We're all learning. Again, we've all got a lot to learn. There's a whole bunch of people who have decided already and have opinions about this one way or another. We know, as Monica mentioned, school needs to be a safe place, and don't assume that all kids have engaged parents to help them through. And if this can be very complicated, like many other issues, they seem simple on the surface, and when it comes right down to it, there are lots of complicating factors that weighed in on this. So this is an evolving issue, and stay tuned. But it's something that's not gone away. And just because we had a policy, we adjusted our policy. We've had a policy for quite a while, and that policy will probably continue to be adjusted as case law and state policy changes and our own experiences inform us.
Next question. District policies state that River Falls School District will not discriminate on the basis of religion. Is opting a student out of a class, lesson, guest speaker's appearance, or book exposure on the basis of religious values valid? Would you support an opt-out form for matters that parents regard as too controversial or age inappropriate or in violation of their deeply held beliefs? We'll start with Alan.
Parents need to know what's going on. The question is, how deeply? Do parents get to comb every day's syllabus of a teacher, all of that? I think it's incumbent upon the teachers, and we have policies around this, incumbent upon the teachers to make sure that it's clear what the books are and the curriculum is in their class and what they're going to be talking about. And we've always had opt-out or alternative assignment policies. We've had some discussion about it at the board meetings this year, and we've tightened up, and we've gone back and redressed some of those places where it wasn't quite clear, or maybe it wasn't quite being followed. And this is where public comment sometimes helps us as we get feedback from people. Well, this didn't happen in this class or whatnot, so can we go back and fix that? Should parents be able to opt out? Sure, I think in all cases. It gets a little complicated because at what point we can't anticipate what your particular sect of your religion might be that might object to something being said in this particular class, always. But I'd say over 90% of the time we can anticipate that, and we should be making every effort to make sure that it's clear what the teacher's teaching, what the teacher's syllabus is, and those kinds of things. All the way down to, just if a parent's got a concern, they should pick up the phone and call. And a number of them do, and it's great when they do because we can talk through and we can hear from them rather than start posting on social media, talking to all their neighbors, or passing on hearsay. It would be really helpful if they're challenged with this or feeling like their rights are not being recognized here to make a phone call. Call the superintendent if you need to, and Amanda will answer the phone, and it's either going to be. And it's either going to be Jamie or Dave, but they're going to be more than willing to talk to you if you've got a question about that. So,
Monica.
I would second a lot of what Alan said, that it has always been my understanding that many of these opt-out policies exist. And I think that's good. I think that parents should have that right. I believe that some of the more controversial and more difficult topics that come up in life can be much more safely approached and addressed in the context of books and media. As a librarian, I really believe in the power of books and media to teach, and I think that it's scary as a parent to wonder what your kid is being exposed to, what they're learning, what they're seeing. But I would much rather have a conversation about a difficult topic in the context of a story or a book that happened than to have a conversation with my child about a difficult topic that they were facing in real life and had never prepared for. And so, yes, I believe in the opt-out policies, but I also believe in making sure that we give teachers and staff the tools that they need to address the concerns that their students and the families in this district have, and to have these things available if needed. And I do respect that there are some families for whom that does not work, and fully believe that that is a parent's responsibility and job to say, this is what I need for my child. If you are holding very deep beliefs, I think that's commendable. And I do think that then it is incumbent upon you as a parent or a family to ensure that you know what your child is encountering. Alan mentioned that we ask teachers to be as transparent as possible, and I think that's right. But yes, opting out is a good plan.
David?
What they said. No, I will echo. There's a lot of things that they said that ring true to what I was going to talk about too. I believe this already happens because I've seen it. I've had kids that I've gotten emails about subjects that have come up that, here's the subject that we're going to talk about today. If you don't want to be, have your child, I was almost said son because that's what came to, but if you don't want your child to be part of this topic or this discussion, we have alternate assignments and different things that they can look at. So I believe this is already happening now. As Alan mentioned, we don't know what everybody's beliefs are, so you may not get to everything, but the teachers try to do the best that they can. I think Alan mentioned that you don't always have parents that are totally involved in this, and he's 100% right. Not everybody's an involved parent, but I think I mentioned it before. The more parents that we have involved in the education, the better the education is going to be. I don't want to tell people what their thoughts are, their religions, their political beliefs, anything like that. They have to make those decisions on their own, and I think making those together as a family is a good decision. So I think opting out is a good thing to have, and I think our teachers do a great job of letting parents know what topics are coming up that might be controversial.
Next question. Should a civics or history curriculum package be adopted because the federal government offers grant money to do so? Or should that curriculum be extensively evaluated before being considered for adoption? Let's start with Monica.
I guess I think that any curriculum being considered should be weighed with the exact same criteria as any other curricula that is brought forward. All curricula should be evaluated with a consideration for rigor, for alignment with standards, and for how well it would fit in the population of the district. So I don't necessarily think that there is any circumstance in which any curriculum should be adopted without kind of going through that evaluation piece, no matter who's paying for it. So, yeah, I think we should absolutely weigh those, and we should know what our criteria is. And I think of this similar to, again, I'm going to call on my experience as a librarian, that when we select, we have a very set established criteria. When we go to purchase materials, we don't necessarily just willy-nilly buy whatever we think. And I know that people may not really think about that, but how do we do that? We have a process, and we lay out all those criteria ahead of time. And my understanding and belief in this district is that they're not going to adopt curricula or start doing new things without going through that process, without understanding the criteria they already have in place, and the standards they're trying to adhere to.
David?
A lot of what Monica said makes sense. I think the first person going, I think we all kind of agree that they have some sense made in this. I think any curriculum that's up for adoption should be reviewed. Now, I don't know if that's all necessarily be reviewed by the board or it's reviewed by administrators, but I think everything needs to be reviewed for what it makes sense. I guess I don't know for sure what our potentially history or civics programs look like, so maybe it's not something that we would need. But I'm a firm believer if it's something that would benefit the kids and their learning, and there would potentially be a grant for it, I think it's something that we would definitely want to look at. Just because what we have right now is what we're doing doesn't mean it's always the right thing. I think you always need to look at new things. I think the district does a really good job of that. I mean, I know they're looking at new English language arts right now for the elementary schools, and I think that's a great thing. I think that all curricula should be looked at least every once in a while. I'll say I think to put along with that, I think the funding formulas for the district, it's been since 1993. That's another thing that should be looked at every 3, 4, 5 years. Not that we're talking necessarily about that, but I just think things need to be reviewed. And I think this is something that we look at our civics and history. If there's a program that we can add to it, and especially if it was a grant provided, I think it's definitely something we should review.
Alan?
Well, I'm trying to figure this question out because I think it's the shiny object question. If you got a chance to get a whole bunch of cash, what are you willing to sacrifice to take the money? That's a little bit of a cynical read on it. Probably isn't, but currently we have state standards. We teach to state standards. We map our curriculum to state standards in social studies, and we have a very good social studies program here. And social studies, quite frankly, is one of the toughest subjects to teach right now in our schools, given a political climate. But we do a good job. So if the federal government were, or I would say any foreign government were to come along and offer us a bunch of money, okay, the first thing we would have to do is say, can we teach this? Is it, or is this something we're already doing and the federal government wants to give us some money to enhance it because they'll pay for field trips now that we couldn't do before? That's another issue. But it has to meet our standards, and there would be a curriculum review on this sort of thing. And if it was a federal thing, believe me, it wouldn't be just our district. It would be the School Board Association, the teachers' unions, the School Administrators Alliance. Everybody would be on top of this, trying to figure out, is this legit or not legit? Should we go with it or shouldn't we go with it? So, yeah, we wouldn't just take it because it's coming at us and it's free money. I don't think the shiny object thing would fly with this board at all. Not that we're not constantly looking for new sources of ways to support our educational endeavors here, but I guess my answer would be no.
Next question. If chosen as a school board member, what would you do if you disagree with a majority opinion? David?
Well, I think this was already covered in our first question that was asked. So to regurgitate what I said, I think the biggest things are to listen and respect the other board members. They've got great opinions. These are smart people on this board. There are smart people running. We've got 3 people here running and Crystal Dubois. They're smart people and they have real good perspectives. And I think the biggest thing is to listen. And listen to your board members. You're not always going to agree on everything, and that's a fact of life. My wife and I don't agree on everything all the time. I don't know why she doesn't agree with me all the time, but she doesn't. So, but I think the biggest thing, like I said, is you need to voice your opinion, and you need to listen to community members. And if they've got an opinion on it, you need to voice those opinions as well. State your facts, state your beliefs, state your thoughts, and get that out there. And if I were elected on the board and it went 6-1, hey, that's the way it goes. It's okay. We're going to do what's best for a majority of the kids in this district, the staff, and our community.
Monica?
Likewise, I'll be repeating a few things, so I'll try not to do too much. But if I were to find myself in a situation where I am the lone person who doesn't agree, I think that's okay. Civil discourse and respective disagreement can lead to greater understanding. And so not only listening, but really being willing to hear. Why do I disagree? Do I disagree because I don't really understand the topic? Do I disagree because maybe I have a different background? Am I bringing a completely different perspective to it? So I believe that having a counter argument and having those conversations is a really good thing for policy development, and it's a really good thing for our own personal growth. And Ellen even alluded to earlier that having members of the public come to the meetings and stand up and give public comment and express dissenting opinions can help to drive policy and help us understand more. And so with all respect included, I really do believe that disagreement can be a healthy thing for growth and learning, and that diversity of opinion is how we best represent everyone in our community.
Alan?
I think that one of the ways we keep from clashing because it's important for us to disagree and have discourse on our issues. Often we do it in the form of questions because we're asking each other. We're trying to figure this out before we sort of all of a sudden throw out our opinions. But typically, when an issue is coming in front of the board, there will often be an administrative recommendation that we get to react to. And again, I mentioned earlier, we have really good administrators here. We put a lot of time into hiring the right administrators and trying to keep them with the district. And we've had a very good track record of keeping administrators with our district longer than most other districts do. And there's a reason for that. We respect them and we trust them, but we also question them. So a typical way might be an issue comes, there might be an administrative recommendation, or here are the important issues that we see. The board would discuss, there may be a policy for us to vote on, but sometimes we will get an issue that will come in front of the board where it will be, here's what we're thinking, and here are several things, and we haven't quite come to an administrative recommendation yet. We're bringing it to you for discussion. We will have a conversation about it, then we'll turn to them and say, now you've heard us talk about this as a board. We'd like you to come back with an administrative recommendation at the next meeting that for us to react to further. Rather than to sit and try and write policy in the board and try and pick it, because we're not the experts, we've hired the experts on this, but we represent the community, okay, more broadly, and we're trying to give community perspective on this. So they don't get a blank check, but they do get a lot of trust, and they really help us sort of figure these things out. So in the end, we aren't arguing at each other and saying, well, I think that, sometimes that does happen, but that we're literally dealing with facts and professionals who can answer our questions and help us with these issues.
We missed this one in number 2.1. That one was overlooked. That question, we should go back to that one.
Okay.
And then, I think on the last section, these three were pretty well answered if you started with 4.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Okay.
Next question. Wisconsin Public School Library state funds are calculated and controlled differently than the rest of state public school funds. Should that independent funding be used by librarians without collaborating with school boards or curriculum committees? If collaboration is required by state statute, how should that collaboration be structured? And we'll start with you, Alan.
Okay, this is a couple things about this question. The state library funds are handled there's a long history. It goes back, Monica probably knows the history of where this money comes from. It's controlled differently, but not independent of schools and school district stuff. So it's a separate source of funding, and it comes kind of directly to the librarians who use professional recommendations and input from teachers and a whole variety of things to make selections about books. The role of the school librarians in deciding this is to work collaboratively with the teachers to make these decisions and with administrators. There's lots of books that move through this process, and when books move through that parents decide they like or dislike, if they like them, they probably don't say anything to us, but if they dislike them, we're likely to hear about them. There's a process for this. We have a policy. In fact, we've adjusted the policy at times as to how this works. And by the way, we're in the process of reviewing all of our policies right now on a regular basis. So one of the things that we do, people are concerned about, so do parents have a say in this, and what about this book or that book? It's not up for a public vote, each book. And we're not going to analyze each book as a board member, because every book in our library would have a divided vote. We rely on professionals. We have a policy around this. And if a parent objects to a book in the library or in a curriculum, there's a process, a very thorough process that goes through that can air this and do this. And again, we're always open to feedback. We're always open to phone calls about this, especially if you're real concerned about specific curriculum material or whatever. A phone call to that building principal, the curriculum director, the superintendent, whatever, to get clarity on it, before talking to others, I think is really, really important. We are a policy-driven board, and we've got policies around this. And this is not money that just drops out of the sky and somebody decides these things independent of the school district.
Monica?
Thank you. I'm actually really excited that we came back to this question because this was the one I was most looking forward to as a librarian. Let's talk about how libraries work. And I don't actually have the history as to exactly how these funds work, but what I really can speak to is how librarians are trained. And when we have selection criteria, we actually, not only do we have a policy for when a complaint comes in or when somebody's upset about a book, but we have very set established criteria for how our selection process works. Librarians are trained. In fact, most of us are required to have master's degrees. And that's something a lot of people don't actually know. I know that the district does have a policy on selection of materials that gives that responsibility to librarians. So it is kind of the final responsibility for making the choices. Now that said, the question does ask about collaboration, and it asks about who kind of is giving a voice. And I can speak as a librarian to say that while the final decision to purchase is mine, my collection is gonna be better the more that I collaborate with others, the more that I take into account who I'm serving. And so the schools, they are creating collections for the students, for the teachers, and for the families. And so I think collaborating with those parties is important. But I also want to further state that I want to draw a line between a library book that is sitting on the shelf in a school library and a book that is included in a curriculum. When it is included in a curriculum, that's where we have parental opt-out. That's where some of the concerns, I think, can hold some weight. A book that is sitting on a shelf in a library is absolutely not required ever to be checked out. We have free will to do that, and so families can set some of those parameters themselves. But I do think that's an important distinction to make.
David?
This was a really interesting question because honestly, I didn't know it worked this way. I had no idea about this. So I did a little bit of digging online on the district's website to try to look at the policy. And I love going after Alan because he's been on the board since 2008. He brings a perspective of things that I didn't know. And I appreciate hearing what he has to say because he's a wealth of knowledge. After finding out, after finding the policy, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong thing. No, okay, I'm sorry. After finding the policy, what I understand is we hire trusted professionals to find the books that we need to have for our library and for our curriculum. And we have to, it's kind of like Alan said, we hire really good administrators. We hire really good professionals to do this. I think the school board kind of endorses the guidelines that are approved by the American Library Association, or at least that's my understanding of the policy. And now this is a real brief understanding. The policy is 3 pages long. I actually did read it, but it's 3 pages long. So I do know that, like Alan had mentioned, that sometimes there's certain books that are brought to the attention of the district that maybe they want to look at, and you can't look at every book, and not every book can be up for question. But I know that if there's some strong feelings about it, it is brought back up and is looked at. And I think there's been some recently where there's been some books that have been brought back and discussed and taken out of circulation. So I do also know that each librarian has a budget on their own from the school district, so they can buy. If they need a computer, if they need some things, so it's not all just state money, but the district also gives them each just a little bit of a budget. It's probably not real big, of course, probably like to be a little bigger, but I understand there is one, so.
Don, if I could add one thing, just kind of as an announcement, but I did double check this today with the superintendent. Every parent this fall received notification that there is a process where they can monitor what books their kids check out of the library. if they want to. If they're concerned that there are books on the shelf, they don't want their kids checking them out, they can monitor that and see if their kids check those books out. So as Monica said, it's free will to pull them off, but if they check it out, their parents will know about it, if the parents opt into that. And some parents do, but most don't.
Next question. The American Academy of Pediatrics has recommended that middle school and high school start no earlier than 8:30 a.m. to give students sufficient sleep. If daylight savings time becomes permanent, our current start time of 7:45 a.m. will effectively be 6:45 a.m. during the winter months. What is your view on River Falls School District's start times? David?
I've heard about this in the past. I've heard it brought up before. The first thing that I think my simple mind says that in about 10 days, our clocks are going to be changed. We're going to spring ahead, correct? So if next school year, we decided to opt for, or if it was daylight savings time was permanent, well, our bodies are already adjusted to this. So when winter comes, my simple mind says it's not going to adjust to 6:45 because the time's not changing. So I had a hard time with this. I do think people adapt. People adapt to this over time. Thanks, David. People adapt to this over time. I know when I've had kids, it takes a week or two for you to adapt to this change of schedule, and our bodies just adapt to it. Personally speaking, I've got kids who have been up early in the morning to go to lifting or sports. And I've got a kid right now, he's 15 years old. He's up at about 5 o'clock 4 days a week. He gets himself up, he makes his own lunch, he gets himself something to eat, gets himself ready, and we take him to the high school. And he's there by 5:55-ish because he's lifting. He's goal-oriented. He's trying to get stronger for football, trying to get stronger for track, doing those things. Yeah, he's tired, but he also goes to bed at a decent time to get that sleep. Now, maybe a lot of kids don't do that, and maybe mine are just kind of different that way. But, if you can discipline yourself to go to bed a little bit earlier, I still think you're going to get your sleep. That's my opinion just because that's the way my kids have been raised. It's the way they do it.
Monica?
Thank you. I thought this was a really interesting question. I have heard about some of the science, and I get it. I get where it's coming from. I believe that there's some research that shows that teenagers are more unable to sleep at night than some other age groups, and that we start getting tired earlier as we get older. So I'm currently, going to bed at 9 every night. I'm just kidding. But that's good. When I really think about this, as great as it would be to be like, hey, let's follow the science, I'm a coach's wife, and just the number of factors that really would make this difficult, including our participation in athletics across the state, where we do have those after-school times that we meet. I think the logistics make this a really, really difficult thing to consider. In a perfect world, we would absolutely be able to flip-flop and have the elementary school students start earlier and the high school students start later, let them sleep in. This is great. But I do think that in addition to sports, you would have issues with childcare before and after school. We would have issues with school start times not meshing up with parent work times. And so I do just think that while the science is there, and it would be great if we could, there are a lot of logistical considerations we need to think about when we start talking about something like this.
It's an interesting question, and it's come before the board before. Early in my time on the board, we actually did a study committee on this, because the research is out there, and as much as it intuitively didn't make sense for me, I'm a farm kid. I had to get my butt up for chores before I got on the school bus. It didn't click with me. The research is pretty clear cognitively. Kids ought to be able to sleep later, like that or agree with it or not. However, for us, we could only we made a little adjustment. This was about 10 or 12 years ago, I think, that we made a small adjustment, about 15 minutes. It helped. But there are real pragmatic issues that get in the way of this. So like everything else I mentioned earlier on this, nothing is as simple as it seems. So once you wade into this, so why do we have it the way we have it? It's because from an efficiency standpoint, we use our buses twice on every route every day. So that if we were to go to a different start time, we probably would have to pick everybody up at the same time, which would double the number of school buses we need, and I'm not sure we could find bus drivers, okay? So just the cost of the additional buses and trying to find the bus drivers could be, now, is there a way to work around that? We can always look at it. So the buses, bus driver availability, the schedules, the after-school issues that were mentioned, some parents like this, other parents absolutely hate it. I got to be to work by 8 o'clock in the morning. Now my kids are going to be hanging around the house after I have to be to work at 8 o'clock. They don't have to be to school till 8:45. What do we do with my ninth grader for 45 minutes in the morning? So does the school district open up early school stuff? Maybe we could do that. There are options out here we could look at. I'm always open to looking at new issues when they come along, and if there's some ways to work around this and it should happen, I'm not afraid of talking about this one again, but as we can talk about the science all we want, but there's some real pragmatic things that also get into this. And from a school board member standpoint, in a district that's already strapped a little bit financially, to try and think about buying all those additional school buses and finding more school bus drivers is just part of the problem. It's significant though.
Next question. Our school district's primary mission is to educate the youth in our community. And yet we all recognize that extracurricular activities such as sports, the arts, and community education enrich the quality of life for community members of all ages. What has been your involvement in those activities that will add to your, quote, big picture of our district? David, start us out.
For those that do know me, you know that I've been involved in sports since day one. When I was a kid, I was involved in sports. It's kind of what we did. My kids just got involved in sports, so it's an easy one for me. I've been involved in youth sports in River Falls and sports in general since 2009 when my oldest son first started playing basketball when he was 5 years old. I coached football, youth football, for 11 straight years. Had different kids, and I did it for 11 straight years. I coached youth basketball, River Falls Youth Boys Basketball, for 14 straight years. I coached baseball, youth baseball, in the district for the Parks and Rec for 10 years. So I've been involved in sports. I think I mentioned it earlier, the River Falls Youth Boys Basketball Board. I was on the board for 13 years and 5 years as president. And the River Falls Softball Board for 3 years when my daughter was going, and I was the treasurer of that association. I'm currently a member of the Lions Club, and I'm a board member on the Lions. My first year as a board member on the Lions. So I think big picture, I can bring a lot of the sports side to this, which can bring collaborative things to it, working with groups, working with kids. I think, you know, when I was in college, I had a decision to make whether to go in elementary ed or go into business. And I thought, boy, I want to make some money, so I probably don't want to go into elementary ed. But I made a decision to do that, and parts of me regretted it, but parts of me were pretty happy that I did it. I love working with kids. I love working with youth. I've gone into schools. When I was a senior in high school, I went into an elementary school and worked for my high school coach. And I did some teaching in there, and I thought it was great. So working with kids is something that I'm passionate about, and I think I can bring some good perspectives to the board if I'm elected.
Monica?
Thank you. I have mentioned a little bit that I have athletic connections through my husband. Little insight into our marriage there. While he is very sporty, I am absolutely not. So go sports, but I literally have said to him, yay, sports ball is not my thing. So I do think it's important, and as David was talking about all of the different athletic things that can give us insight into this bigger picture, I also want to bring into some of the things that I genuinely have a love of theater and music and arts, and we never, ever miss a musical. So every fall, I kind of make my husband go to that. He had never seen a play before he met me, and he loves them now. So, we also like to go to band concerts. We like to go and make sure that we see the marching band. Like, our marching band is incredible. And so I think part of learning about all of the extracurriculars that this district offers, I got when I was the youth services librarian here in River Falls, and I had a lot of middle school and high school activity groups, book groups, teen advisory committees, and I got to know a lot of kids on a personal level and really started talking to them about the things that they were excited about. And it may not surprise you that there weren't as many sporty kids that were also library kids. I mean, we had a couple, but a lot of my library kids were the more artistic and creative kids. And they really got me to start coming to see their art shows and to start coming to see the theater and play. And so I really have learned to love that and learn to just take a lot of joy in being able to see what kids can do when they are operating in an environment that they are passionate about.
All three of my boys were involved in extracurricular activities in the school district, and this school district does a good job. And I want to do a shout out to David Crail, our activities director, who he does a really good job. He's got a lot of respect from the board. It's a tough job because you got to balance all of these sports and all of the things going on in sports, but then you got all the rest of the activities too. And if there's one characteristic you can say about every sport is, and everybody who's in the sport and every coach who's in that is, what's the common characteristic? They're competitive, okay? They're competitive. So you got this herd of cats that's tough to ride herd on. So it's really, I think, managed here as well as we could expect, and Dave does a great job of that. Some things have been mentioned, the music, the marching band here, the clubs and organizations. And when I start to list them, then I'll miss some, mock trial, forensics, FFA, FBLA. There's just, I could go on and on, the number of clubs and organizations that someone like Dave has to keep track of and help support and find advisors for. Chess club, there's all kinds of clubs and organizations that kids can be part of, because we know that belonging, being part of an organization, being part of these kinds of activities help students feel connected to their school. The more connected they feel to their school, the more likely they are to be successful academically. So there's all these other things that we do as a school district. And activities and sports are one of those things that are hard to assess. What's our school report card, okay? How are our students reading and how are they doing on math and those kinds of things? It's hard to assess these kinds of things, but they're important parts of our school district. They help keep kids motivated, they help keep them connected, and there's really, literally something for everybody in this district if we can get the kids connected with the right people. So I like them, and I think that we're very fortunate, given the size of our district and the budget that we have, that we get so much bang for our buck with extracurricular activities here.
I think this is a wrap-up question for 1 minute.
All right. You each have a minute to summarize your views, and I guess I could start with David.
Again, thank you for the AAUW for hosting this. I think it's been great hearing a lot of things. Like I said, I love listening to Alan because he's got such a great perspective of being on the board for a long time. I think, they ask a question is, why are you running for the board? Well, being born and raised in River Falls is something that has been great for me. The community's been great. The school district's been great. I've got kids that have come through here that I think are doing really well in school. Post high school, they're all getting very good grades. They're all doing really well where they're at collegiately, and I think the district is an amazing district. I want to have a positive impact on students, staff, and administration in this district, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm giving back. I also want to represent our community in a really positive way, and I think being on the school board does that. I've done the sports, I've done that stuff. I think it's time to turn into the school district and try to give back.
I meant to say you had a minute and a half before you see the yellow card. But you could go on if you want to.
Well, let's talk. No, I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Monica.
Thank you. I also want to echo that I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to talk, and so thank you to AAUW for putting all of this together and the work that has gone into gathering these questions. Really, when it comes down to why I am running, I spent some time coming up with my own personal mission for who I wanted to be. And this was a number of years ago when I was serving as the youth services librarian here in town. And at that time, when I distilled my personal mission down, it was to be a safe adult in the lives of the children and youth of River Falls. And I really still hold to that as being who I want to be. And I believe that opportunities when they present themselves to give back to the community, to be of service, but also to find a way to just keep the focus on the kids. Kids are very important to me. They've been important to my career and really all my life. And I think that I am super passionate about getting to know the youth of this community. I love to hear their stories and see where they're going. And I think some of the greatest joys about being able to be a librarian are those relationships that I've developed and getting to see kids as they grow and move on and become the people that they're going to be. And so the opportunity to run for school board really is almost selfish on my part as a way of still staying connected, giving me purpose, but also just being able to be that safe adult and fulfill my own personal mission.
So, from my standpoint, being on the school board is really a calling. It's kind of has to be, but it's been I've been honored to be on the school board, and quite frankly, in all of my years, because I'm by far the oldest on the school board, it's the most meaningful thing I've ever done in my life. But I can also tell you that the highs and the lows during COVID, it was the most toxic thing in my life. So what did I decide to do? In the midst of it, I decided to double down and run for the board of directors for the State School Board Association, in for a penny, in for a pound. And it can be very stressful and meaningful at the same time. And I've never really had anything in my life that can tug on me in both directions. That's can be very stressful and taxing and a lot of work and a bother sometimes. But yet can be so meaningful when I sit through these meetings and see the impact that we can have and the engagement of the community and the support that this community has for our schools here, just as represented in our recent referendum votes. Huge turnout. Really just appreciate the fact that people are concerned, whether they voted for or against them, really concerned and supportive of our schools and interested in where our schools are going. Our school are proud of our school districts. Our district, even though we've had one of the lowest funding formula rates in the state, based on the state funding formula, we've got one of the highest report cards, academic report cards, as measured in the state. We've got one of the highest bond ratings in the state, as measured by our fiscal responsibility, and that helps us so much going forward. We provide choices. The Montessori School and the Renaissance Academy charter schools, this district, are things that neighboring districts and most of the districts in the state don't even come close to being able to offer. And we offer choices for parents. I want to stay on the school board and run for re-election this year because I think I've got experience. I would like to see us implement these referendum issues that were passed so that we can make sure that we do what we told you we were going to do and follow through. We've got some history with that. And make this transition of new superintendents. I'm just really excited to see all the new things Dave's going to bring to us in the future, Dave Bell. So anyway, thank you. Yeah, no pressure.
So that's it.